Everybody, welcome to today's Better Way Thursday workshop. We are so glad you're here to join us. Today, we are talking about a topic that is a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit tough to deal with, but is something that is so relevant to all of our tech moms and actually to most working women. We are recording this just before Mother's Day. So, as a Mother Day gift to all of us, we're talking about mom guilt, but we're going to talk about how to mitigate and overcome and reject mom guilt. So it really is a gift to us. I want to make a quick caveat as part of this conversation. We do talk about the fact that you don't have to be a mom, a literal mom, to be a tech mom. The sad thing that is true is you also don't have to be a mom to feel mom guilt. This is part of our culture where women are heavily uh, relegated into caregiving roles, which is wonderful. A lot of us love to fill those caregiving roles, but most of the responsibility falls on us. So even if you're not a mom of like your own children, most women have caregiving responsibilities, whether it's for a sibling, for nieces and nephews, for stepchildren, for our own parents. There are so many ways that we are asked to give care in our personal roles. And then as women who are also working outside the home for pay, we've got all those responsibilities there. And trying to manage those different things causes us to feel tension. And I'm not going to get into just talking about mom guilt is because that's one of our questions for later. But anyway, I just want to say you don't have to be a mom to feel mom guilt. I think there's going to be part of this conversation that's relevant to all of us today. And I am so thrilled to have this wonderful panel here with us. We've got women from various backgrounds and life circumstances who are going to share their expertise as moms and working women and how they deal with this. So first, I'm going to ask everybody to give a short introduction. Natalie, let's have you start. Just tell us a little bit about your work history and also your history of life as a mom.
Great. Robbyn, thank you so much for having me. And hello to all the tech moms and anyone else that is listening. I'm so honored to be on this panel today. My name is Natalie Okeson. I'm a vice president at Clark Capital Partners. I work in corporate responsibility, and I'm also the executive director of the Labor and Honor Foundation. My background is mostly in political campaigns, legislative affairs, nonprofit management, and fundraising. My husband is a basketball coach, so we move all the time, which has really caused me to have to stretch into several different types of careers. And it's just been a really fun, exciting career. Definitely nothing that I planned or career trajectory, nothing that I had planned, but lots of fun and have met wonderful people along the way. My children are 13, 9, and 5. So a little bit spread out, and we're in that middle school, elementary, and just finishing up pre-K. So those are the ages, and that's been my mom journey and my career journey. Again, wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Noelia.
Yeah, hi, thank you everyone. Noelia Augustyn here. I'm the head of people and talent at Closed, a tech company in Lehi, Utah. My background's in recruiting. Previous to Closed, I was working at Instructure, an ed tech company in Cottonwood Heights, there for 7 years, primarily in recruiting, but wanted to make a change, and I pivoted into a startup that was just 30 employees here at Closed, and now we're 130 employees. So it's been a lot of fun. Being that my background's in more HR and recruiting, I'm a big champion for supporting the moms in the workplace. We've had tech moms here before, and it's really, really important to me. I'm a new mom. I have a 17-month-old son, and he is everything. I tell everybody, above all, he's the most important thing to me. So you can still be a working mom and be, a champion for your kids as well. But anyway, so that's a little bit about me, but excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Noelia, I love to meet people who still like their children. So congratulations. It may not last forever, but enjoy.
I only have
I'm just
one.
kidding.
Yeah.
No, that's so great. All right, Christine.
Hi, yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. So I'm Christine Thayer. So I am a principal process engineer with Micron Technology. So my background, I've been in the semiconductor industry for 12 years. Companies have changed a little bit just through some differences and everything, but I'm with Micron right now. I do a lot of, my background, I guess, is chemical engineering, but I do a lot of program and project management, as well as a part of that. In my time with I Am Flash, I was part of the group that started up our women's ERG there, and I met Robbyn through that. We put on a big summit, girls summit, where we brought in external speakers, and my camera's going to start doing weird things. But yeah, so I'm really happy to be here. My son, so I have one son, he's 2.5. So still kind of sort of in that new mom stage compared to a 13-year-old and dealing with middle school. We're still dealing with the preschool and all of that toddler aspects that come with that. So yeah. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christine. Great to have you. And Marilyn.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Contreras-Pinegar. I am a chemist by trade. I have a long career that I've been sifting through over 20 plus years. I started as a chemist and have spent most of my career working in pharmaceutical companies, huge pharma, and then nutraceutical companies. I currently work at Nu Skin Enterprises, and I am a communications and education manager. I work in research and development. I help create new products, and I teach our customers and internal employees about the science behind our products. I have spent most of my life working. There's little tiny gaps where I haven't for different reasons. I have one husband, 2 daughters, and 1 son. And they are sparsed out, which I think it's important to point out. My daughter's 20, my next daughter's 13, and the little guy is 10. Purposely sparsed out, and maybe I'll share later on here why that happened and how that was planned, because I think it talks about what we're going to talk about today.
Ooh, fascinating. I can't wait to hear that story. That's exciting. And I'm going to introduce myself as well. I think most of the tech moms know me, but I will join in and certainly pipe in on this panel as well. I have 6 horrible children. No, they're okay. I have 6 kids. The oldest is 24. Then I have 21, 19, 17, 14, and 11. And I took a long career break. And I think that's a different perspective that I bring from most of us on this panel. I was at home for 15 years and then came back to work when my oldest was 15 and my youngest was 3. And I started work part-time and moved to work full-time just a couple of years ago when I started Tech Moms. And the perspective, like, I just wanted to mention that we've got women from, brand new moms, those of us who have been around the block a few times. And this issue of mom guilt, we saw it in Tech Moms a couple of months ago. That's when I decided to do this panel. One of the moms who was new to Tech Moms, she had been on a career break and had a couple little kids, and she wrote into our general alumni Slack channel and just said, other women who've got kids, how do you do this? How do you deal with the guilt? My kid keeps saying, Mom, why are you going to class? Why aren't you staying home with me? Why are you going to work? Why aren't you staying home with me? What do we do? And all these Tech Moms just started answering, chiming in and saying, I feel that too. Here's what you have to do. And I realized that that this was something that we needed to talk to, especially in terms of this community that has women from a lot of different backgrounds. Some of them, single moms with a lot of financial need, certainly no choice, right? Like, working is the way we have food on the table. Other women without the financial need, but an emotional need or a personal need, a desire to go to work. And this comes from all different backgrounds. And sometimes I think women who choose to work versus those who have to work, and whatever those terms mean, I think feel a little bit more guilt. And people will say, you could quit your job. You have a partner. He makes plenty of money or whatever. And so we have all this baggage, all this cultural stuff on top of us. So I want to start with this question. What is mom guilt? What does it mean to you? What does that term mean to you? And how do you see it in our broader culture? So Noelia, I want to start with you with that question.
Okay, thank you. Yep. So what mom guilt means to me is the feeling that my parenting is not enough and the anxiety and the worry that comes with it. comparing myself to my friends, to social media, to my coworkers or my coworkers' wives and how they do things. And, the idea that I leave my son to pursue something else besides him. I think that is how I internalize mom guilt. So anyway, I hope that helps.
It does. And I mean, that is such a common feeling that I think so many of us experience this. I'm not enough. The way I'm doing things is not enough. Thank you so much. Christine, what does mom guilt mean to you?
Pretty similar, that constant feeling of like you need to do it all, and you never can, so trying to balance that feeling of, oh, I have to do everything, but I can never do it, so I'm never going to be enough. And especially, Noelia, you mentioned social media. Like, I think that's huge, especially now, there's all the mommy blogs out there of, oh, you have to do it this way, you have to do this way, oh, your child isn't doing this yet. So I think that's an added, thing, that maybe wasn't around, 20 years ago, or whatever, where you didn't have that to deal with. And you just see these snapshots of everyone's life that look perfect. And you're like, oh, wait, why doesn't mine look like that? That adds some more guilt on there to everything.
Thank you so much. What an important perspective. And I was parenting before we had mommy blogs. I was almost parenting before the internet. Not quite, but it's a different, I didn't have to see all these pictures on Instagram of everybody else's perfect kids when my kids were little. So that doesn't add another layer. And as an old person, I will tell you, just delete all your social media accounts. You'll be so much happier. All right, Marilyn, what does mom guilt mean to you?
Well, as an old person, like you stated, I didn't have that at first, but now it's there. And I do see the power of it that they're talking about. Mom guilt is, to me, it's taken me a long time to learn, comes from two sources. It comes from allowing those comments that come towards me that are not positive about what I'm doing and working. And it also, my own self, I'm the source of that mom guilt also. So it's allowing myself to feel less than. That's what it has become to me. And it creeps up all the time. With as long as I have worked, as long as I have been a parent, it comes all the time. It's a constant battle.
Marilyn, that's so powerful. The idea that it can come from external sources, but it can also come from internal sources. And do you know, like, where that, I mean, how have you internalized this message? Because I think first it was external before it was internal, right?
Yeah. So what I realized was it is cultural. I've had the opportunity to live in many places in the US and outside of the country also. And how my mindset has changed depending on the culture around me. Because sometimes there are places where it's like more acceptable. The fact that I want to go to school and work and do things about myself, and other places that I've lived, not so much. And so it's allowing those messages to sink in, and that's what it is for me.
That's fascinating. I love that. All right, Natalie, what do you think? What does mom guilt mean to you?
I think we all carry around idealized visions of what motherhood or parenting or caregiving is supposed to be. And then we just come up short. And for me, as a working mother, it's come up most often as missed out on time together. So whereas maybe I'm not so worried that I couldn't afford those cool concert tickets or that little pair of shoes that they wanted from Target, I'm not worried so much about them missing out on some of these financial things or activities that I can afford to pay for. It's the time spent together. It's walking them to school, or that field trip to the park. The moms that are in there helping, doing reading time in the classroom. And so that time spent together and missing out on that's really where my guilt shows up in terms of mom guilt. And I do understand that all caregivers, like you mentioned when we first started, you don't even necessarily need to be a mom to experience that mom guilt. A lot of it just comes down to wanting to spend time with and create and cultivate thriving environments for the people we love. And so whether that's aunt, or maybe you have fur babies and you're not quite getting that time that you want, or creating that perfect environment that you hoped for, when we fall short of that idealized version, it really can create such a sense of guilt inside, and that can kind of like was mentioned from outside sources, or maybe we can be our own source of mom guilt. And it's been present since the youngest was little. And it's with me today for sure.
I had someone tell me today that they were experiencing, it wasn't mom guilt, it was becoming a stay-at-home mom even before she had kids. Like when she was pregnant, she got out of some responsibilities at work. Even before the kid was born, it changed some things. Natalie, you bring up such an important point, and I said this at the beginning. You don't have to be a mom to feel mom guilt. You also don't have to be a working mom to feel mom guilt. Like stay-at-home moms feel mom guilt all the time, right?
Yes.
There is a culture of perfectionism. You've got to do everything right, and whether you are working and providing more financial but less maybe one-on-one or whatever kind of time, or working and have those other resources, that was such a powerful thing to do. We cannot win, right? If we are going to allow ourselves to be feeling I really am less than, I'm not doing as much as I could. Well, of course not. None of us are ever doing as much as we could. So no matter what, this culture is putting us on us. And the other thing, Natalie, I really love that you said is we feel it because our emotions are so strong, right? Because we love the people in our lives that we're caring for, and we want so much for them. We want things to go so well. We want our relationship with them to be so wonderful. So it's natural that we start to feel this. So, I mean, maybe that's something we can start with, to say, you know what, the reason why I feel this mom guilt, I'm not going to beat myself up about it. It's because I love my kids, or I love the other people that I'm caring for. And so now what am I going to do with it? Right. So before we get into that, I want each of you to share a story. I think it's really powerful to hear other people's stories because they remind us of our own stories and go, oh yeah, I've done that. Oh yeah, I've been there. Or maybe one of us will tell such a crazy story that we'll go, at least I'm not that bad. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. So Christine, let's start with you. Can you tell us an experience of when you felt mom guilt?
Yeah. So my son was probably about 9 months old at the time that this came up. So this was still kind of during the pandemic, still kind of, transitioning from working from home to back in office. And then our company was also going through a transition at the time where we were being bought by a different company. So with the job role that I do a lot of transfer of information from site to site, and then setup of that. So there was a trip where they wanted us all to go to Texas for a couple of days to do kind of this summit, to review all of the stuff that needed to be transferred. So that would, on my team, that was my responsibility, really to do that. But I had this 9-month-old at home who had decided he didn't like bottles anymore, who was breastfed. I was struggling with postpartum depression at the time as well. And it was just, a huge mess of, I felt guilty to leave my son. I felt guilty to my team at work because I wasn't there with traveling. And it kind of took a total kind of breakdown to my husband about it all, for him to be like, you can't do this. Like, this isn't fair to you. Like, your team gets it. Like, luckily I had a great relationship, with my boss and all the other guys on my team. And, none of them made me feel guilty, about it in any way whatsoever. They were like, oh, we totally understand. Don't worry about it. We'll cover it. And so, like, I still called into all the meetings, but the conferencing software or hardware that was used was terrible. And like, I could not hear anything, and none of us could. So that guilt continued then, as we were going through it, of the whole week of like, oh, I should be there. I should be able to be participating more than I could because of, again, limitations that were outside of my control. But that guilt was still there. And it, took some time, and then that kind of helped. It changed how I looked at work and approached everything, too, of, oh, I have this son now, because it was still new. And especially coming out of the pandemic where I'd been home, I was now trying to juggle what does this look like when I have to go out of the home? to work. So, yeah.
Christine, that really is a classic story of this phrase that we've all heard before, that that parents are expected to parent as if they don't have jobs and to work as if they don't have families, right? And you were in a situation where at work you had these pressures that could not acknowledge your new motherhood status. And a 9-month-old is not going to be, oh, I understand, Mom, this is a busy time for you, right? Like that's just not how it works. And so that really is a classic example. And I love how even when you were getting in a really, really dark place, that someone else was able to help you say, you don't have to do everything. You have people around you to support you, and this is going to be okay. So shout out to your hubs for like, Christine, you don't have to do it all. So it's great to have those support people in our lives, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But thank you so much for that story. Okay, Marilyn, when is the time you felt mom guilt?
I had lots. So, but I thought this one was important. So I waited 7 years to have my first child. I was working on my education and it was important to me. And I did receive a lot of negative comments during that period because I wasn't starting my family. And then I had this beautiful girl, and I waited another 8 years to have the next one, and also negative comments. But I remember when the youngest one got almost old enough to play with the older one, and they were starting to interact, and it was just awesome and cute. And then my oldest turned to me, this little girl, and said, Mom, why didn't you make us twins so we could have played together? And it was like my heart ripped out of my chest, like. And that was a huge mom guilt, because the reason my children were spread out wasn't for any other reason than I want to finish school. I can only handle one little one. Okay, now I feel like I might be able to handle the next one, and so forth. And that's why my children were spread out the way they were. So that was a big one. And I had to soothe myself from that comment and realize that it's okay. It is exactly where I'm supposed to be and how it was supposed to work out for me. So.
Wow, Marilyn, that is so powerful. And as I mentioned, that other tech mom, sometimes this guilt comes from our kids, right?
Okay.
And they're and they're not trying to be malicious. Sometimes they are. Sometimes my kids are. They're like,
and a little older they are.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, when they are. My kids are like, why are you always on your phone? You don't love me. And I'm like, I'm literally doing my job. I'm writing emails, like, leave me alone, right? But your little kid was not trying to be malicious. He was just asking a sincere question. And I thought of this before with some of your answers, like, these feelings are real and they can be justified in some cases. And it is because no one can do everything all the time. And we do have to make trade-offs. We do have to make those sacrifices in different areas. And so even when it's our kids coming to us, Marilyn, I love how you talked about the fact that you had to listen to what she said and feel those feelings, right? Feel her really feelings, and then soothe yourself by saying, even though this hurts in this moment, I made the decision that was right for us and for our family. And so we have to think about what we're hearing, think about what it means to us, and then validate ourselves and our choices that we've made and recognize we can't do everything. We're doing what we can do. Marilyn, do you have a story like when your kids are older? Because we've got a lot of young kids here.
The current mom guilt that I experience right now with my older kids is when I'm in a meeting and I can't make it to the soccer game, or I'm late, or, all those times when I'm running in and I missed it. I feel a failure. That's how I feel. No matter how good I'm doing at work, I just like, I'm falling short.
And so what do you do in those moments?
Push it out of the way and say, I'm going to do better. And I keep trying.
Yeah. And keep trying. I think when I have those same kinds of experiences, which I do all the time, like when your kids are little, you're missing little things. When your kids are big, you're missing things outside of the home, right? Like the soccer games and the choir concerts and things like that. And sometimes I just have to remind myself, this is not the only one, right? Mm-hmm. There will be another soccer game. There will be another thing. And do you know what I really do all the time is when I am there, like I totally emphasize it to my kids. And I tell, and I'm spread out job and kids, but also I have 6 kids, and often I'm missing one kid's thing for another kid's thing, right? And so I, like, when I'm with my kid, I go, today I'm prioritizing you, so they like feel it and say, I'm missing this other thing so I can be here with you right now. I have a patented parenting technique. It's called guilt suasion. I use it on my kids all the time. So I invite you all to use my same method. So, I mean, but I do tell my kid, like, be here in this moment. So the next time you want to say, Mom, why aren't you at my thing? I'll be, do you remember I was at that thing last time? So I really am like being deliberate to them to say, I am putting you first in this moment. It won't always be that way. I have other things in my life. So Marilyn, I love it. Push it away. Right now, I'm not going to dwell in that. And I'm going to move forward to the next thing I've got to face. Natalie, when's a time when you felt mom guilt?
Oh man, I'm with Marilyn. There's a lot to choose from as your kids grow. But first, can I just say thank you to Christine for sharing that story. Having also been a survivor of postpartum depression with my oldest, I didn't experience it with the next 2. It's such a struggle. Thank you for being brave enough even to mention that on this panel. And I'm so glad that your husband was there to support you. Having loving people around you can help in those moments, but it's hard. It's really hard. And I think so much of it goes unspoken. So I just wanted to say thank you for speaking about it, so other moms can know that we're with them. But then let me lighten it up, because one of the like ultimate mom guilts that I get is summertime, because my kids are watching all their friends swim all day, and they're putting up lemonade stands, and I'm like, sorry, you got to be at the sitters. And they're like, but I was at the sitter's house last week when it was school and not summertime, and so we tried to do the fun camps, that kind of stuff, but there was one summer where my toddler was waking up every day and putting on a swimsuit and like covering herself in sunscreen. It was the first thing that she did every day, and she'd be like, hop into the bedroom like it was a Saturday and we were hitting the pool, and every day I had to just kind of be like, we got to put on clothes, we're not going to the pool. Summertime, so much guilt. So that was just to lighten it up a little bit, but I will go back to what you shared, Robbyn, was the clear and consistent communication and just being very intentional, sharing with them exactly what they can expect. So she might not have truly understand, but we would say, today is not a pool day and tonight's not a pool day, but tomorrow after I pick you up, we will go to the rec center, and then communicate that a couple different times on the way there, the next day as well. And then what we've started to do is print out calendars of each of the months of their summer break, fill them in with each of their names and all the fun things that they're going to do, and then a variety of items that we can choose to do as a family, whether it's a baseball game or Thanksgiving point or whatever it might be, and then just fill them in as we go. And so they can see an overall picture of all the wonderful fun things that I'm going to do and we will make it to over the summer. But that alleviates that day-to-day pressure of, why am I not having the most fun summer of all time while you're at work? So these are just little strategies, but yeah, summertime is its own mom guilt beast. At least that's what I found.
When I first went back to work, I was just working part-time, but even then I'm like, I hate having a job in the summer. This is so hard. Natalie, that calendar idea is genius, because I think kids are so good at living only in the moment, right? And even if they went to Lagoon yesterday, if today they're doing something else, like we never do anything fun. So I love that, making it really visual and reminding the kids, we're doing so many fun things. This moment may not be fun, but you can't say we never do anything fun, because look what we did yesterday and look what we're doing on Thursday. So I love that. That's a brilliant idea. Noelia, tell us about a time when you experienced mom guilt.
Yeah. So the time I can, well, first I'll say I experience a little bit every day. When my son's at the age now where he knows I'm about to leave and he just holds on to my legs, and I'm like, oh, it breaks my heart, but it's also so cute. But also I have to remind myself, like, I'm going to see you in a few hours and we're going to spend, the whole weekend together, or whatever it may be. But the thing I think of most when I think of mom guilt is both being a new mom and being a new mom going back to work and figuring that out. So my postpartum stress anxiety came from breastfeeding. I really struggled with it, and my son lost quite a bit of weight, in the first month. And so that was the stress of like not being good enough to like feed my child, you know, seeing my friends or people around me being able to do that so easily. That was like a huge letdown to myself. And finally, my husband, you know, he was every doctor appointment, I was so upset. And he finally said, Noelia, at the end of the day, he needs to eat and he's going to love you the same no matter what. And so I had to have that moment with myself. So I pumped, you know, leading up to work, and it worked out great. I supplemented with formula as I needed, but going back to work, I had this like severe anxiety of how am I going to manage the time it takes to pump while also like getting everything done that I need. You know, at the time we were still really small and I had a really small team. So I was rolling up my sleeves at work. And so just like giving myself grace that, you know, when I finally made the decision, it was just 1 month after I came back to work, that my son's going to love me the same. He's going to be a healthy baby. He needs to eat. And for me, being hooked up to the pump wasn't what I wanted when I got home from work. I wanted to, if people can do it, it's amazing. I just couldn't do it anymore. And that's the decision I had to make for myself, that when I got home from work, I wanted to hold him, get him the bottle and just be with him. And so anyway, I had to just learn how to turn around the negative self-talk, that I was taking care of him the best that I could. And, you know, he's going to be a happy, healthy baby either way. And we're going to be okay. And I will throw out too that my work, they did an amazing job creating a mother's room for me. And so there was a little bit of that guilt too, where I was like, oh, I only used the mother's room for like a month. And we put in all this effort of creating this amazing space, which now I'm so happy two moms are using it now. So it was beneficial for the company as a whole, obviously. But yeah. So anyway, just the guilt of like wanting to be enough and, you know, having an expectation, having it not work out, and just reminding yourself like, it's going to be okay. You know, your baby's going to love you and it's going to be okay. So anyway.
Wow. We're hitting like all the big issues, right? There are so many of these topics. And again, the cultural expectations, breast is best, you know, these other things that we've been hearing forever. And I love what he said. He needs to eat and he's going to love you no matter what. That's so powerful. I love these external voices, and that can be so helpful for us. I'm going to share an experience as well, and this is one of the things that I talk about in so many issues where women are facing these kind of internal struggles. Some of the things that we are hearing and feeling are real. They're based on real things. Like, really, we're not going swimming today. That's not just my perception that I'm not a bad mom. I mean, that I'm not a good mom. We're literally not going swimming, right? And then there are other things that are false, that are based on false. Now, I'm not saying you're not a good mom because you didn't go swimming, but I'm just saying you literally didn't go swimming. So the recent time that I was experiencing mom guilt, the thing that happened that changed in my life when I went back to work after being home for 15 years is I stopped cooking at all. And people don't believe me. They think I'm exaggerating. Like, I do not prepare any food at our house. So my kids, just starting 7 years ago when I went back to work, like everyone just forages all the time. And so my kids just eat like corn dogs, they eat ice cream for dinner. Like, there's always food in our house. There are never meals, right? And so, and that was a decision I made. Everybody does it differently. I decided that I would rather go to a soccer game than cook a meal, right? So I made the choice. My kids are going to eat garbage, but I'm going to go to their soccer games. I know so many women who make the opposite choice and their kids are healthier and whatever, you know, like we all have to make choices. We all have to make sacrifices. So about, like 2 or 3 months ago, my kids, if you have 6 different kids, they're going to have different body types and different sizes and things like that. And my 17-year-old is not nearly as tall as my 21-year-old, my 2 boys. And one day I said, oh my gosh, I wonder if the fact that I stopped cooking these nutritious meals has like stunted my child's growth. And he didn't get as tall because I wasn't making healthy home cooked meals. And my husband is like, you literally are so stupid. Like, nutrition does affect like people in developing nations who literally don't have enough food and they won't get as tall. It did not affect your son who's living in a home with plenty of food just because you didn't cook it from scratch and make all the homemade stuff. Like, and so there are times when this mom guilt, but I felt it. I'm like, oh my gosh, my kid's not going to be the star on the basketball team because I stopped cooking healthy home cooked meals, right? It was based on a lie. And we can hear these lies all the time, right? I'm sure all of us have internalized these messages about what the perfect mom does and what the perfect worker does, and we're not doing them. Now everything is a catastrophe. So I think it's valuable for us, and sometimes we'll need a third party. Like I had a third party, Noelia, you had a third party, right? To say the story that you're telling yourself is not true, and everything is okay. And so to discern the truth from lies, I think can also help us move forward a little bit.
Yeah,
So
and
go ahead.
Robbyn, I just say I almost sometimes in certain cultures or different states that we've lived in where there's mom guilt on the side of the mom who's staying at home versus the mom who's going to work, because I have friends who have college degrees but who are stay-at-home parents, and people ask them now that their kids are in school, what do you do? And they feel guilty for still being at home. And I was at one point just a couple of years ago working 2 jobs. And when my youngest, I was dropping her off at the stay-at-home mom's house who watched her, who I adored and loved and thanked every day that she was a stay-at-home mom and was available to help watch my child. I forgot the breast milk. I forgot the baby food. And I just showed up. I had driven 35 minutes on my way to the office. I couldn't turn around to my house. I couldn't do anything. And I just showed up on her doorstep with my baby, essentially in tears. Same thing. Couldn't feed. I mean, we have 2 stories here about food. And is there anything more like
essential, right?
Essential than being able to feed your child? And I remember putting out a post and I was just like, these mommy wars, where does this even come from? Because I worship this woman. She is so lovely. She enables my family to live a life that we need to, where I have to work 2 jobs. And she's just like, I'm all over this, Natalie. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be good. And I'm thinking, who are these made up people who created these mommy wars? Because I don't know if you're working outside the home or you're stay-at-home mom. Like, I love these stories of all the support people got from their husbands or from other people. But I feel like we have each other's back a lot more than maybe what the world wants us to see. And we hear those negative messages from somewhere. But man, I really feel like moms out there have it way more together for each other, even when we're dropping lots of balls and forgetting the food or worrying that our kids aren't growing tall enough because we're not doing home cooked meals. But I do think that whether you're stay at home or working outside the home, there can be guilt on both sides
100%.
and everywhere in between.
And I'm so glad you brought up the mommy wars, because that's been a sensitive topic for me forever. Before I ever started working, I blogged. I wrote 8 blog posts, so I can't really consider myself a blogger. And then I started going back to work. But one of the blog posts was about the mommy wars and this pressure. And I really do think, like, as women, we are so great at supporting each other that when we do feel that competition, when we do feel that warlike tendency, it is because a culture has told us that we are not enough. And so we want to strike out at somebody else and go, well, if I'm doing it wrong, they're doing it wrong too, right? And so I love the idea that we all need to, and I think most of us do most of the time, support each other, celebrate each other. All our decisions are personal and individual, and we'll all do different things over our whole lives. And so it'll be like we all just need to love and lift, right? So Marilyn, this next question is for you. Have you ever tried to push back against a culture that creates mom guilt, whether it's at an individual, like if someone made a comment to you, like saying, why, I had the same thing, Marilyn. I waited a few years before I had kids. And a lot of people, when are you going to start having kids? When are you going to be doing this, right? So whether it was an interpersonal reaction, talking back to one person to push back against the mom guilt, or more broadly against the culture as a whole.
Yeah, I have lots, and sometimes it falls on deaf ears, sometimes it doesn't. Unfortunately, I think mostly it fell on deaf ears, but so two instances real quickly that I'm going to share. The first one was when I was a young mom and I was working, and then I'd hurry to the, I don't know, PTA meeting, whatever. And the predominantly group around me were stay-at-home moms. So I already felt that guilt, like I didn't fit in, I couldn't connect, all kind of self-imposed. And a lot of those meetings turned into, because they would ask you to bring something, turned into, let's all express our talents and how we can bake. And it was quite a show. And over and over, I felt very inadequate because I would come in with my grocery store stuff, right? And I felt bad. I felt inadequate. So, you know, I think our tendency is to try and fit in a group, to try and be like what others are doing. And so when I joined these groups, it was hard on me to be that. And I just put my pathetic little cookies or whatever. And I remember as time passed, at one point, and people would ask me, oh, did you make this? I'd be like, no, you know, and shrivel up. But I remember one time, I think probably I came from a hard day at work and was a little snappy. They did ask, someone said like, oh, did you bake those? And I said, no, but I made the money that bought them. And I remember feeling like it came out, you know, like sometimes you react. But I remember afterwards, like feeling like that power inside me for saying, no, I made the money that bought those. And it became, I remember repeating it in my head and thinking, I made the money that bought those. And it almost became my mantra of power to myself of, I have value. I made this money. That is powerful, what I do. So that was one. And the other one, there was someone that told me that, like blatant, you know, you're really not raising your kids. Other people are raising your kids. Straight out comment. And I was hurt. I cried. I was angry. And it took me a while to get over that. Mm-hmm. But then I remembered that my kids come home for comfort. Where do they go? They come to me, right? Like I am not replaceable. I remember starting to notice that about my children, and they come talk to me. My kids learn values from me. I remember noticing that I, even though my kids, other people were helping take care of my kids were learning values from me, and I was teaching them how to be self-reliant and independent, and they looked up to me, and our relationship was good. And no, they weren't raising my kids. I was, because they came to me to learn, and I was their teacher and loved them. So those were the two. I didn't say much back to that person that said, you're really not raising your kids, because I couldn't. And it's okay to feel powerless at the moment. It's okay. It happens to all of us. So.
Wow, those are both such powerful stories. I love hearing you creating a mantra for yourself. There are a million different ways to contribute. There's not one right way to be contributing to the work of raising our children, caring for our families, contributing at their schools. There are lots of different ways to do that. You can give the money that pays for the thing that the school really needs, right? And not everyone can do that. So, and that story of your own recognition of what your relationship with your children and how nothing changes that, right? So powerful. Thank you so much. Natalie, when has been a time when you've pushed back against this culture of mom guilt?
I don't know that I'm going to be able to come up with a perfect example of pushing back. I hope it's just the way that I treat other people, that it's small and consistent, that I love you, whatever your choice is. And I trust that whatever choice you're making for your family is the one that is right for you, is right for your kids, is right for your spouse. And it might not even be the one that you want to be making. I mean, that's what I find so insensitive about all of it, is that some people are working out of necessity and would love to be home. And there's other people who are home who would love to be out in the workplace. And there's a million ways to exist in the world. And I hope that the way that I treat other people is sort of a small, defiant pushback, in that I love you and your choices. And you know, you're just fine in my book. And how can I support you? And how can I help? Because everybody's just doing their best. Everybody is just doing their best. So yeah, maybe not one big pushback, but maybe a lot of very small ones, and just the joy that I hope I share with others that I love your choices. I think
Natalie,
you're just
that's the perfect answer, right? That's the perfect answer of supporting everybody. I have called myself long before it was okay in my culture of a Mormon girl growing up in Utah. I have long called myself a feminist. I've always claimed that label proudly. And they're like, well, how can you be a feminist? Feminists believe this and feminists believe this. And I said, well, my brand of feminism is that every woman gets to do what she wants and what's right for her, right? That's what it means to me. And so I love that you celebrate all the people that cross your path, and you do. Natalie's the most wonderful person. I love you as a friend. And but just saying what you're doing, wonderful. What you're doing, wonderful. Right? That's perfect. That's a way to push back against a culture that wants to pit us against each other and say you're doing it wrong. Yeah. Celebrating everyone's choices is a wonderful way to do
and
that.
And if you're not happy in what you're doing, how can I help?
Yeah. Yep.
How can I make it better?
Noelia, when's the time that you push back against this culture?
Yeah, it was, so I was with a few people and we were talking about, you know, the vacations that we had planned, and I had planned a fun family vacation that was a week long. And someone said to me, didn't you just get back from maternity leave? You just had 3 months off. And in that moment, I was just like flabbergasted, because it was a male who said it. And I was really proud of myself that I came up with the words to correct him of, you know, everyone's experience with maternity leave is really different, but mine was really hard. And I'm sure most women would say it's really hard. You're learning, you're adjusting, you're trying to figure out this new life. And anyway, so with that, it made me realize, like, normalizing the conversation. A lot of women are really scared to complain or like talk about all of the things that they feel they're doing wrong, or you know, this, even like frustrations with their kids or whatever it may be. And so what I've started to do, I have a group text with my mom friends, and in there it's pretty funny, but every time something terrible happens or we feel mom guilt or we're frustrated with our kids, we throw it in the chat and we just talk about it together and like share our experiences. And that's been really powerful for me, because it helps me relate to people around me and realize, like, this is not just me. And just like what you were saying, like a tech mom mentioned it and then everybody's talking about it. And it's like these things that you feel terrible talking about sometimes, but it's just like totally normal. And so like bringing awareness to it and helping people feel comfortable, like we can talk about this, like we can talk about postpartum depression or the anxiety that comes with it or whatever it may be, and make people understand that, like, it's not all rainbows and butterflies. It's amazing and the experiences are beautiful and the best that you'll ever have, but it is like the most challenging thing in the entire world at the same time.
For sure. I love that group of friends that you have, that you can just be like, throwing it out there. I'm not alone. And then again, like some people's hard stuff, you're like, dang, I'm so glad I'm not dealing with that. And then they're saying the same thing about you, right? Because we've all got our own stuff. Noelia, the other thing that I love that you said was bringing up the idea that this man has no idea what you've just been through, right? And just even kindly and gently correcting a misperception that maternity leave is a vacation, right? I think, and again, some people might have that experience. I'm guessing 90% of moms don't have that experience, right? And so you helping him understand, he's obviously never taken a maternity leave, right? And just help him understand this was not a vacation. This was an adjustment time as part of a new, you know, bringing a literal human into the world. And I still deserve a vacation. I love that you were brave enough to say that. And hopefully he was able to hear that and recognize, oh yeah, I've been thinking about that wrong, right? So wonderful. Christine, when was the time that you pushed back?
I'm not sure I really have a great example here either, similar to kind of Natalie, but, you know, similar to Marilyn, I waited, 10 years before we had our first kid. So, I was working for 10 years, we were married for 10 years, and we were in Utah, and as Robbyn, you mentioned, that is not very normal in Utah. And so I would get questions all the time, at work, outside of work, when are you guys having kids? When are you having kids? When are you having kids? And we're just like, we're happy, when we feel ready, we'll do it, when and if,
Right.
We were very kind of non-committal about it for a long time. But if it felt right, we would do it. If it didn't, we weren't going to. So that kind of the same thing of just, everybody has their own path, everybody has their own way of getting wherever they're going. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong if I do it differently than you. We don't all have to go on the same way be happy or to be successful. So yeah.
I love that. Just gently educating and letting people understand what your priorities, not necessarily my priorities, your timing, not necessarily my timing. We're going to make the decisions that are right for our family. That is a great way to push back against people who are maybe sharing things that are none of their business, right? So we're coming up against our time here. And so I would love to ask one final question to each of you, which is, what advice would you give to other women who are experiencing mom guilt? One piece of advice to help them learn to banish this from their lives to whatever extent they're able to. Natalie, let's start with you.
It gets better. I swear, as my kids get older, they understand more. They appreciate the fact that I need to go to work, that there's will be fun things. I will show up. I will always still be there. It does get better as they grow. I really do feel like they understand the logic, and they can ask for what they need. I need you right now. Can you be present with me? Maybe not in those words, but the way that they ask, and then certain times I can't be there at that, and they understand. Just, it gets better. It's better.
Natalie, thank you so much for sharing that perspective, especially for those of us that are just in the early stages and like, is this ever going to be okay? Love it. Noelia, what's some advice you have?
Yeah, I think something I tell myself daily is to give myself grace, that, like we've said it a billion times, but we're doing the best that we can. Prioritize, my mental health and making sure that I'm in check so that I can show up for my kids, for myself, for my husband, for my work. And that, there's going to be roller coasters with that and times of struggle, but to give yourself grace that, it's going to be okay. You just push through and rely on the support that you have to help you realize, like, we're going to make it. It's going to be all right. So
beautiful. Thank you. And rely on your posse of mom friends, right? When you need them. Absolutely. Christine, what's a bit of advice you have?
Finding, or I guess, getting rid of some of the social media followings, doing like a big purge, in the beginning, like right after I had my son, I started following, all these like new breastfeeding accounts, this account, and it just got out of control. And then I quickly realized, it wasn't helping. Like, yeah, some of the tips and stuff are great in going and finding some of that, but having it constantly there just wasn't good, so try to get away from that, or even like after you do it, really sit and consider, like, did this help me? Like, did this actually make me feel better? Did it make me feel worse? And kind of judge that on the, kind of social media content that you're taking in.
Christine, that's so important. One of our mottos at Tech Moms is comparison is the thief of joy. We stand by that so strongly. It applies to us at work. It applies to us in our progress as professionals, and it certainly applies to us in our roles, our personal roles, our caregiving roles. There is nothing to be gained by saying, look at how she's doing it. She's doing it better than me, or look how she's doing it. She's doing it worse than me. Aren't I great? Right? No joy comes from that. I love that. That's so powerful. Marilyn, what's a piece of advice you have?
Well, I'm a numbers person. I spend a lot of time in like clinical studies and things like that. And I took a dive many years ago looking into working moms and moms who go to school and moms who do reach for these goals. And I found amazing things that gave me power, amazing data. Some of my favorites were the influence that moms who go to school have on their children, even more than a father going to school. It's powerful. A second one that I loved, I found this article that talked about it's not about being with your kids all the time. It's about having quality time. So quantity, it's not that important, is quality and really connecting with your children. That was also a great source of power for me. And the last one is the influence that you have on your children is not replaceable. You as a parent are the most influential person, and you are working towards raising kind, responsible children, and you can do it. Watch out for the voices that are not only external, but that are internal. And work on that. It's a lot of work. I work on it every day.
Marilyn, that's so beautiful. And if we had time, I was going to pull into some of that research. If you're worried about it, go do some research on the benefits that working moms bring into their children's lives. There have been tons of studies that show that kids who are raised by working moms turn out to be great, wonderful, successful, amazing kids, right? Don't be feeling like, oh, my kids only ate ice cream for dinner for 10 years. They're in big trouble. They don't eat ice cream for dinner every night. Let me just say, just most nights. So I just want to add one last piece of advice here before we close. I heard a story once that was told in an interview by Nora Roberts. I don't know if any of us will admit to reading Nora Roberts. She's like the queen of the romance novel. She's written like so many novels. She must write a novel like every 3 weeks, right? One of the most prolific writers. And she told a story about juggling balls. She said, every day we're juggling balls, and as working moms, we are juggling hundreds of balls a day, right? And she said, some of those balls are plastic and some of them are glass. And she said, the trick is figuring out on any given day which is the glass ball that you cannot drop. And people have taken that to like twist it a little bit and say, oh, of course your family is the most important thing, right? But that's not what she meant. We will all agree, of course our family is our most important thing, right? But on any given day, that glass ball might be something different. So on a day when you've got a huge annual report due, or you've got like this mommy and me yoga class or whatever, that day the annual report is going to be the glass ball, and the mommy and me class that can drop, that's going to be okay. And then another day, if you've got a team stand up or whatever, and you've got a kid who needs you in that moment, that's the glass ball that moment, right? And so I think about that all the time when I've got conflicting needs, conflicting priorities. I'm like, which is the glass ball in this moment? And what are the other things that I can let drop? And I've used that as a guiding principle for myself. And I think I found it really, really helpful. So I'll throw that idea out there to you. Thank you so much, all of you. I loved hearing your stories. Thanks for your vulnerability. We shared a lot of personal stuff today, but I know that it is powerful. And as we learn from each other and support each other, we're going to find better ways to find the peace and the harmony that we need in our lives as we're doing this wonderful thing of raising families, caring for others, and building solid careers at the same time. So thanks so much, everybody. And we will see you next time at our Better Way Thursday workshop.